Hi Year 9, so today we're looking at a new extract. It is called Half of a Yellow Sun. It is a book based in Nigeria and flips perspective between 5 characters. Before explaining more about that, I want to explain the learning objective of the lesson today. So answer exam style questions 1 and 2. So as I've said in earlier lessons, we're looking at language paper 1, section A, this half term. So we'll be looking in more detail questions 1 and 2. So in your last lessons where you looked at the book feed, you're kind of getting a feel for the analysis questions and look at structure and language, but we're going to look at the questions a bit more detail for these next few lessons. So what you want to do for your do now is watch the video until I say pause, because I'll be asking you to pause and then move on to the next section, and read the extract. So the extract is Half a Yellow Sun. You'll find it in handouts. So what you please do now is pause the video and read the extract. Spend 10 minutes reading the extract and read it carefully. If you have finished that now, you want to restart the video and I'll explain task 1 for you. So as I said, this text is based in Nigeria. So what you're going to want to do now, I shall explain a bit more about the text first. It might help you refine your research. So this text is a novel placed in Nigeria during the Civil War of 1967 to 1970. So it was written in the mid to early 2000s, but it was based in the late 60s, early 70s, where there was a civil war going on. The effect of the civil war is shown through the dynamic relationships of the 5 people's lives. So as I said, it is a book that is written in 5 different perspectives. It switches between them, which is great because it gets you to see how differently people think about the same situation, scenario, how it affects them differently, and their attitudes to it. So these sort of books are really interesting. So the 5 people are 2 twin daughters of an influential businessman, so you have quite wealthy, affluent people, a professor, a British citizen, remember it's Nigeria, but so someone from a slightly different culture, and a Nigerian houseboy. So he's a servant of sorts. He's about to become the servant of the professor. The extract what you will have read now is from the perspective of the houseboy. After a succession, the lives of the main characters drastically change and torn apart by brutality of the Civil War. So that brings me on to task 1. What you're going to want to do is you have 20 minutes to research as much as you can about Nigeria. I've put some bullet points here, which are things you might want to look at, I'd recommend looking at for your research to guide it. Where is it? In which continent is it? What does it look like? What sort of terrain is there? What's the weather like? What are the seasons like? What does it look like on the ground? So what does the landscape look like? You're going to want to look at rural and more urban areas because the text switches between the 2. And also you might want to have a look at the aerial view of the country so you can see how big it is. You can see the proportion from rural to urban. Also remember the text is set in the late 60s, so you might want to have a look at Nigeria in the late 60s because that's what the text is about and it'll be different from today. You might also have a look at what it looks like today and see the contrast. Different ethnic groups, there's a wide range of ethnic groups in Nigeria, and also there's a wide range of languages, but have a little look at that in the main language. What happened to West Africa during the European slave trade? So it's a dark part of our history, our shared history. You're going to be wanting to looking at that. How did Britain become the imperial ruler? Though many countries are fighting for it, so how did Britain get it? And what happened during the Civil War? This is the time that the text is set in, so that'll be a very important part to look at. Present your research in a fact file. Do insert it here, so whenever you do your tasks, do it in the box. Just space down, you can make it a bit bigger. If you do your research on Word or PowerPoint or on pen and paper, that's fine. Just upload a copy here so I can see that you've done it and have a look at what you've done. So that's what you've got to do for task 1. You have 20 minutes for that. Please pause the video and begin with that task. When you finish that task, press start on the video again. So for task 2, we're having a look at exam timings. This is a really quick task. You might want to note them down, so they're just there. For section A, you have an hour and 5 minutes this exam, so it's not a long time to write 4 answers. That's a longer one. The 2 and 3 are worth about 8 marks. Question 1's worth about 4 marks, and question 16 is worth 16 marks. Question 1's just retrieval. You've already had it. You'll be having a go at that in a moment. And question 2 and 3 here are piece paragraph base. So you've got to really punctual your timings with this exam. Then you've got 40 minutes on section B, but you don't have to worry about section B for now because we're not covering it in this half term. It is the writing section. In section A is your analysis and reading. So what you're going to want to do is think about when you're writing a question. So you're actually only going to have this long. We're going to have a lot longer today because you're learning how to answer these questions, but I've got long on the exam. So that's what you need to do for task 1. For task 2, we're having a go at question 1. The really good thing about both language papers, paper 1 and 2, they're always going to ask you the same style question for each of the questions. So you can have an unseen text, an extract like you're reading, but question 1 is always going to ask you the same sort of thing. Question 2 is always going to be on language. Question 3 is always going to be analysing structure, and question 4 will be an opinion that you've got to argue for or against, or what your belief is. So you'll go in knowing what you need to write about and how to write it and craft those answers. So for question 1, it's always a retrieval question. They'll give you specific lines to focus on. It's usually about 5 lines, so it's usually at the beginning of a text, but it might be slightly longer than 5. I doubt it be any shorter. So be really, really careful with this, because it's an easy question, but people tend to lose marks through not looking closely enough at what line. So what I tend to do when I get this question is put a line above line 1 and then a line under line 5, so I know not to go past those boundaries, because if you have a really good answer and you write it but it's on line 6 or 7, you're not going to get the mark for it. It will ask you to list 4 things in this question about a specific area of the text. List 4 details. You list your 4 details there. So this particular one is list 4 things from this source that we learn about the master. I'm going to quickly pop to PowerPoint again, which shows you a bit more. So you need to be specific as you can. You will lose marks for being vague, because when we go through the answers you see they're quite specific things they're looking for. You can quote from the text, or you can rephrase. Either is fine. If you do quote, I'd avoid simply just dumping a quote as your answer. I'd say, for this one example, the master is, in your own writing, and then insert something about what the master is. So I hope that makes sense. Also, make sure to only put 1 thing per bullet point, because that's how you put all your 4 points on the first bullet point. Still only going to count as 1 point. I hope that makes sense. Right, so you're going to have a go at that and pause the video now. So, hopefully you finished question 1, task 3. What we're going to go through now is possible answers, and this is where you can see they're quite specific. So if you've had any of these answers, give yourself a tick. Master is a bit crazy. Master spent too many years reading books overseas. Master talked to himself in his office. Master didn't always return greetings. Master had too much hair. Master is a good man. Master feeds his servant well, with meat every day, as long as they work well. So those are some things you could have. Give yourself a mark out of 4 here. So that's question 1. It's really easy marks, providing that you do it within the right lines. So moving on to task 4. You need to watch the video of where I explain how to tackle task 4, question 2, and then I want you to write 3 sentences explaining what you need to do for this question. So we're going to pop back to PowerPoint now, and we're going to have a look at question 2. So question 2 is worth 8 marks. Again, you'll be given a section of the text to look at. You'll always be given a section of the text to look at for this question, so make sure you're just writing about this section of the text. I think it's always wise to underline and box out where you're meant to be writing about. So I draw a box around lines 6 to 15, so I don't go outside the box. You're analysing language. So this is your classic P's language analysis. You're looking for about 2 P's for this, and it's language. No structure, just language. What do I mean by that? Words and phrases, language features and technique, and sentence form. So in these questions you'll also get a you could include the writer's choice of. It's hinting to you what language actually is. Words and phrases. So that is when you zoom in as much as you possibly can about a word, what it could mean, what it shows, what the effect of it is, what the connotations are. Language devices, your metaphors, similes, onomatopoeia, all the things we cover and recap a lot in lessons. Those are your language features. What you really want to avoid is just saying this is a metaphor. You need to explain the effect of it. This question is looking for really zoomed in analysis of language. So if you're just feature spotting, it's not going to get you very far at all. You need to explain the effect of it in detail. And sentence forms as well. Explain those a little more. So what could words and phrases mean? Interesting verbs and adverbs, adjectives, noun phrases, language features, the senses, so sensory detail is a language feature. Creative writing would have been, we covered last half term. I wanted you to write about all the senses as much detail as you can, so you know what senses are. Metaphor and simile, personification, onomatopoeia, and alliteration. I'd avoid, if there's a simile and a metaphor, that gives great imagery. I'd explore and analyse that. If you have the choice between something a bit more in-depth, like a simile, personification, or metaphor, I would avoid alliteration and onomatopoeia because they can be a little shallow in what they show. This question is asking you for effect, so what is the effect the writer wants to create? And analyse the language in as much detail as you can. It's actually a deep analysis. Those two make that a little bit harder. So if you have the choice, go for a metaphor or simile. Sentence forms. So looking at sentences which have structural features which are interesting. So if there's a sentence with lots of listing, that's something you might want to pick up on. They might be listing things that make them nervous. They might be listing things that make them excited. Listing speeds up a sentence. It's showing you the person's going in depth on and on and on and on, and that shows you something about what the character's feeling or thinking. Repetition again, it shows you that the character might be particularly upset about something, or they can't get something off their mind, or they really want to hammer home a point, or it shows how excited they are or how sad they are, because it feels the need to bring up the same topic, theme or emotion again and again and again. Short sentences, so there's your short simple sentence. I think a one word short simple sentence is really impactful. You might have a short simple sentence which is a couple of words long, or you might have a succession of them. So in the book Thief, you looked at the short simple sentence where the narrator, the personification of death, the narrator, had just 3 short simple sentences about death. That could show he's unemotional, he was conversational, he was factual. So short simple sentences can be done to show shock, joy, is that impact they're looking for. It slows the text down if there's lots of them next to each other, so it could show to echo a heartbeat or to build drama or tension. Long sentences, so it's a really long complex sentence or a long compound sentence, slow the reading down because there's not enough breaks. It kind of goes on and on, on and on. So it could show time dragging, or it could also show that someone's speeding through things and not quite thinking enough, or is overwhelmed with emotion. So that's how you can analyse sentence types. You need a range of points to get above level 3. So you want to be doing at least 2 Ps. So you might choose a word that you want to zoom in, you might choose a metaphor or a language feature, you might choose a sentence type. But you want to be looking at the same quote in multiple angles. So don't just say, say you pick the word happy, write a couple points about what it can mean, what it shows, what you can imply, what the effect is, so dig really deep in those. Don't do this. Don't give generic or vague statements. So the long sentence makes it flow beautifully. It might do that, but what is the author trying to get across? What's the actual message behind it? Keeping the reader engaged. Every book wants to keep the reader engaged. You could say that about any text. So it's a bit of a throwaway comment, that one. Makes the reader visualise the scenario in mind. Again, every text. Every novel will make you do that. So again, throwaway comment. What does the author want you to visualise? Does the author want you to visualise the dry sand that makes the narrator's throat dry up? It almost feels like they're dying from dehydration. Those characters land. I'm just giving some examples, but that's what they can make you want to visualise. Don't just leave it as something to visualise. Be specific about what they want to visualise. So now what I want you to do, is I want you to go and have a look, write 3 sentences explaining what you need to do for this question. So just summarise what I've said. Now we're going to have a look at question 2 in more detail. I'll pause the video, summarise the sentence. Now moving on to task 5, we're going to have a look at question 2. Look in detail at this extract. So lines 6 to 15, remember only about those lines. The question is, how does the writer use language to describe, I'm going to murder this name, Ue's experience of leaving the village? I've definitely got the pronunciation wrong. My apologies. You could write about the writer's choice of language, features and techniques, words and phrases, and sentence forms. So we've covered that. Read through the extract and highlight examples of words, phrases, language features and forms that you find interesting. It will probably help if you have a copy of this printed out. If not, don't worry about it. So let's have a look at one I started doing. So this is the section. Ue did not believe that anybody, not even his master, he was going to live with, ate meat every day. So language, I've zoomed in on every day. That shows how surprised he is, how amazed he is. He's in disbelief. How can you eat meat every day? How can you afford it? It really shows the divide in wealth, that rural poverty and the moderately well-off or affluent professor in the more urban area. So something you could zoom in about that. He did not disagree with his auntie, though, because he was too choked with expectation, too busy imagining his new way of life from the village. So I've really zoomed in on the 2 here. It's repetition, which shows how he just can't believe it, how he can't get past it, how he's never experienced anything like that, so he can't actually imagine it. Also, you can have a look at the sentence as well. It is a long, complex sentence, so that's something you could mention as well, how it shows his racing thoughts, how he's feeling so overwhelmed. Another bit I liked as well is when they said they had been walking for a while now, since they got off the lorry at the motor park, and the afternoon sun burned the back of his neck, but he did not mind. So there you've got an example of a simple sentence which works really well. We're not too sure about how the character feels. You've got these long sentences that are quite packed and busy all up until now and make him feel very overwhelmed, and we don't know that if he's actually enjoying it. We know the sun's burning him, so he might be feeling unwell, he might be feeling scared, he might be feeling in pain, but this is a turning point in the text. We realise that he's actually excited to be here. He's overwhelmed. It's so busy, but it's in a positive way. So that simple sentence really changes it and flips the text for you. So what you need to do now, when you finish highlighting and analysing that text, there's still more to analyse in that section, but I don't want to give all the answers away, is find an example where words and phrases have been effective in answering this particular question. Language features and techniques and sentence forms. For the example section, you need to put a quote in, and then you need to explain how it answers the question in the explain and effect. That's what you need to do for task 5. You've got about 30 minutes on that, so pause the video now to complete that. Hopefully you're starting the video now again after completing task 5. What you need to do for task 6 is actually answer the question. So you've done all the hard work, you've analysed the extract, you've explained it and found almost your quote and explain section here. Now you need to answer it. Do this by writing 2 P style paragraphs. So you will on handouts have a P's breakdown description grid where I put sentence starters for P's and a breakdown of P's explaining what you need to do for each section. Use those if you're struggling or just want a refresh on P's. Begin to answer that question now. Remember, this question is looking for a language analysis in as much detail as you possibly can. That is it for today's lesson. If you have any questions, please do email me. I'll be going through your OneNote as always, but emailing me is the quickest way to get to me because my computer blings very loudly. Brilliant. Thanks, see you 9.